Admiral Vextar stood before the massive holographic display in the command center of his flagship. The crystal walls around him hummed with energy, casting blue light across his scaled face. His 4 eyes studied the star map floating in front of him, focusing on one small yellow star in the outer edge of Sector 7 Alpha. "So this is the system the primitives call home," he said to his aide, Commander Zilneth. His voice carried the authority of someone who had conquered 47 worlds in his long career. "Yes, Admiral," Zilneth replied, her crystalline body shifting colors as she spoke. "Our long-range scouts confirm it. The 3rd planet from their star. They call it Earth." Vextar touched a control with one of his 6 arms. The display zoomed in on the blue and green world. It looked peaceful from this distance. Harmless. The kind of planet the hegemony had absorbed hundreds of times before. "What do we know about them?" he asked. Zilneth activated her datapad. "The species calls itself human. They achieved faster than light travel only 50 cycles ago. Our xenobiologists classify them as Class 3 primitives. They evolved from hunter-gatherers on a high-gravity world." High gravity? Vextar's mandibles clicked together in what passed for laughter among his people. "No wonder they're so aggressive. Probably makes them slow and clumsy too. The reports suggest otherwise, Admiral. Their gravity is nearly 3 times galactic standard, but that's not the strangest part." Vexitar turned all 4 eyes toward his aide. "Continue." "They've placed warning buoys at the edge of their system. The message is broadcast in 17 different languages, including ours." The Admiral's crest flared with annoyance. "Show me." The holographic display changed to show a simple metal device floating in space. It looked crude compared to hegemony technology. A voice began speaking in accented but clear Zephyrian. "Warning. You are entering Earth's territory. Any hostile action will be met with immediate and overwhelming force. Turn back now." Silence filled the command center. Then Vextar began to laugh. The sound echoed off the crystal walls as other bridge officers joined in. "Overwhelming force?" he gasped between laughs. "From a species that just learned to leave their own planet?" Commander Zilneth waited for the laughter to die down. "Admiral, our intelligence reports show they have fewer than 50 ships total. Most are cargo vessels or scientific explorers." 50 ships, Vextar repeated, shaking his head. "The Eternal Dominion alone carries more firepower than their entire fleet." "How many worlds have we conquered again, Commander?" 847, Admiral. 847 civilizations, Vextar said, spreading his arms wide. "And now these humans think they can threaten the hegemony with 50 cargo ships and a warning beacon." He turned to face the tactical display showing the hegemony's assembled fleet. 2,000 ships hung in formation around the massive dreadnought stations. Each vessel bristled with quantum disruptors, plasma cannons, and reality-warping weapons that could crack planets in half. "Perhaps they don't understand what they're facing," suggested Lieutenant Kexaval from the communications station. "Their technology is primitive. They might not realize the size of our forces. Or perhaps," said Science Officer Morden from his position near the sensor array, "they have some defensive capability we haven't detected yet." The bridge fell quiet. Morden was known for his careful analysis and had saved the fleet from ambush more than once. But Vextar dismissed the concern with a wave of his primary hand. "Defensive capability," he scoffed. "Commander Zilneth, what weapons do our scouts report?" She consulted her datapad again. "Kinetic projectiles, Admiral. They fire metal slugs using chemical explosives or magnetic acceleration." More laughter rippled across the bridge. Even the normally serious Morden made a sound of disbelief. "Kinetic weapons?" Vextar said. "What's next, wooden clubs? Sharp sticks?" "The projectiles do achieve significant velocity," Morden said quietly. "Some approach 1% of light speed." 1%, Vextar repeated mockingly. "Our shields can deflect plasma moving at 30% light speed. These primitives might as well be throwing rocks." He turned back to the star map and studied the human system again. Something about the warning bothered him, though he couldn't put his finger on what. No species had ever dared to threaten the hegemony so boldly. Most civilizations begged for mercy when the fleet arrived. Others tried to negotiate. A few attempted to hide, but none had ever told the hegemony to turn back. "Admiral," came a voice from the communications station. "We're receiving a transmission from the High Council." The holographic display shifted to show the 5 members of the hegemony's ruling council. Each represented one of the founding species that had created their galactic empire 1,000 years ago. Admiral Vextar, spoke Counselor Prime Thesara, her serpentine form coiled on her throne. You have reviewed the human situation? Yes, Counselor Prime. A simple absorption operation. I estimate complete conquest within 10 standard days. Good. The Council has reviewed the xenological reports. This species shows promising traits for military integration. Their high-gravity evolution should make them useful shock troops once properly conditioned. Vextar nodded. The hegemony had perfected the process over centuries. Conquer a species, break their will to resist, then use their unique abilities to strengthen the empire. It was efficient and practical. However, continued the Counselor Prime, their warning message concerns us. No primitive species has ever made such bold claims. We want to understand why. Desperation. Vexitar replied immediately. They know they cannot win, so they try to frighten us with empty threats. Perhaps. But investigate thoroughly before beginning full conquest. We cannot afford surprises. The transmission ended, leaving Vextar alone with his thoughts. He walked to the vast window that looked out on his assembled fleet. The sight never failed to impress him. Thousands of ships stretching into the distance, each one a masterpiece of hegemony engineering. The humans claimed they would meet hostility with overwhelming force. What could 50 primitive ships do against this armada? What could any species do? Commander Zilnith, he said finally, prepare a diplomatic squadron. 200 ships should be sufficient to demonstrate our strength. Yes, Admiral. Full battle formation? Standard intimidation pattern. We'll give them one chance to surrender peacefully. When they see our power, they'll realize how foolish their warning was. He paused, looking at the yellow star on the display one more time. Something still nagged at him about the human message, not the words themselves, but the tone. Most species pleaded or threatened when faced with conquest. The humans had simply stated facts. Warning. Enter Earth's territory and be destroyed. Not, we will try to stop you, or, we will fight bravely. Just a simple statement of cause and effect. Like stating that water was wet or that stars were hot. Vextar shook his head, dismissing the thought. He was letting the strangeness of the situation affect his judgment. In all his years of conquest, no primitive species had ever posed a real threat to the hegemony. The humans would be no different. Set course for the human system, he ordered. Time to teach these primitives about the real nature of overwhelming force. As the massive fleet began moving toward Earth's solar system, Admiral Vextar felt the familiar satisfaction of another easy conquest ahead. He had no way of knowing that humanity had been waiting for this moment for 50 years, preparing for the day when the galaxy's greatest predators would finally notice the small blue world at the edge of nowhere. The hegemony was about to learn that sometimes warnings should be taken seriously. The human ship looked small and fragile, floating in the darkness of space. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching the enemy fleet approach through the main view screen. 200 alien vessels moved in perfect formation, their crystal hulls catching starlight like frozen fire. Contact in 15 minutes, reported Lieutenant Torres from the sensor station. They're maintaining standard approach vector, Sarah nodded calmly. Around her, the bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency. No panic, no shouting orders. They had trained for this moment for years. Communications, any response to our warnings? She asked. Negative, Captain. We've broadcast the standard alert 17 times in their language. They're ignoring us. Sarah looked at the tactical display. 12 human ships faced 200 alien ones. On paper, it should have been a massacre. The aliens didn't know what they were really facing. Weapon status? All railguns loaded and ready. Kinetic barriers charged. Point defense systems online. Good, remember, we're not trying to destroy their entire fleet. We need some of them to survive and report back what happened here. The alien fleet began to slow as it reached the outer marker of Earth's defensive perimeter. Sarah watched them form what her tactical computer identified as an intimidation formation. Massive dreadnoughts spread out in a line. Smaller ships arranged behind them. It was designed to look overwhelming. It was overwhelming. Each of those alien ships was easily 3 times the size of the Defiance. Their weapons could probably vaporize a human vessel with a single shot. But size wasn't everything in space combat. Incoming transmission, announced the communications officer. Put it on screen. The view screen changed to show an alien face. 4 eyes studied Sarah from a scaled reptilian head. When it spoke, the translation software turned its words into English. Primitive vessel. I am Admiral Vextar of the Hegemony Fleet. You will surrender immediately and prepare to be boarded. Resistance will result in the destruction of your entire species. Sarah kept her expression neutral. Admiral Vextar, I am Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earthship Defiance. You have entered our territory after repeated warnings. Withdraw immediately or we will defend ourselves. The alien's mandibles clicked together in what might have been laughter. Captain Chen, you command 12 small ships against 200 vessels of the hegemony. Your bravery is admirable but foolish. Surrender now and your deaths will be quick. Admiral, you seem to have misunderstood our warning. We told you that entering our territory would result in immediate and overwhelming force. We meant exactly what we said. Behind the alien, Sarah could see other creatures moving around what looked like a crystal cave. Advanced technology lined the walls far beyond anything Earth had developed. These beings had been traveling between stars for thousands of years. Your ships are primitive, Vextar continued. Your weapons are crude kinetic devices. Your technology is centuries behind ours. What possible threat could you pose? Sarah smiled for the first time since the conversation began. Would you like a demonstration? Before the alien could respond, she cut the transmission and turned to her weapons officer. Target their lead dreadnought. Single railgun shot, center mass, fire when ready. Firing, the railgun made almost no sound. A small piece of tungsten, accelerated to 8% of light speed, shot out from the Defiance toward the alien fleet. It crossed the distance between them in less than 2 seconds. The alien dreadnought's shields flared bright blue as they tried to absorb the impact. For a moment it looked like they might hold. Then the tungsten slug punched through like the shields weren't even there. The massive alien ship shuddered as the projectile tore through its hull from bow to stern. Internal explosions lit up the darkness as secondary systems overloaded. Within 30 seconds, the pride of the alien fleet was a drifting wreck. Well, said Lieutenant Torres, reading his sensors. That got their attention. The alien fleet immediately began moving, ships breaking formation and spreading out. Their weapons started charging, energy readings spiking across Sarah's tactical display. All ships, this is Defiance, she broadcast to the other human vessels. Execute attack pattern Delta. Remember, we want survivors. The 12 human ships moved like a pack of wolves. Where the alien vessels were large and powerful, the human ships were fast and agile. They accelerated at rates that would have killed any normal crew, pulling maneuvers that bent the laws of physics. The aliens opened fire first. Beams of superheated plasma and quantum disruptors lit up space, each shot carrying enough energy to level a city. But the human ships weren't where the aliens expected them to be. Captain Chen felt her body pressed into her acceleration couch as the Defiance pulled a turn that generated 15 Gs of force. Her enhanced physiology handled it easily, but she knew the aliens couldn't survive maneuvers like this. Their technology was advanced, but their bodies were still biological. Target the cruiser on our port side, she ordered. 2-shot spread. The railguns fired again. The alien cruiser tried to dodge, but it was too slow. Both tungsten slugs hit, and the ship came apart in a ball of fire and metal. Around them, the battle continued. Human ships darted between the larger alien vessels, firing precise shots that crippled rather than destroyed. The aliens began to adapt, trying to predict human movements, but they were fighting a type of warfare they had never encountered. Captain, called the communications officer. We're receiving surrender signals from 6 enemy vessels. Accepted. Tell them to drop shields and cut engines. Sarah watched the tactical display as more alien ships fell to human weapons. The enemy was learning, but not fast enough. Their ships were designed for the kind of space battles that had dominated galactic warfare for centuries. Massive vessels trading shots at long range. Victory going to whoever had better shields and bigger guns. The humans fought differently. They used speed and precision, hitting weak points in vital systems. Their weapons were simple but devastatingly effective. A chunk of metal moving at significant fractions of light speed didn't care how advanced your shields were. Captain Chen, came Admiral Vextar's voice over the communicator. His earlier arrogance was gone, replaced by something that might have been fear. We request a ceasefire to discuss terms. Sarah looked at her tactical display. Of the 200 ships the aliens had brought, 47 were destroyed or disabled. The rest were scattered across the system, many showing damage. The human fleet had lost 2 ships, both to lucky shots that caught them during high-speed turns. Admiral, the terms are simple. Withdraw from our territory immediately. Any attempt to return with hostile intent will be met with the same response. This is impossible. Your technology is primitive. Your ships are tiny. How did you— Sarah cut him off. Admiral, you've been fighting wars against civilizations that developed in peaceful galaxies. We evolved on a world that tried to kill us every day for millions of years. Our technology might be simpler than yours, but it's designed by survivors. The transmission ended, and Sarah watched as the remaining alien ships began withdrawing toward the edge of the system. They moved slowly, carefully, like wounded animals afraid of another attack. Think they'll be back? Asked Lieutenant Torres. Sarah studied the retreating fleet. The aliens had come here expecting an easy conquest. Instead, they had run into something they didn't understand. Humans didn't fight for glory or honor. They fought to win, using whatever worked. Oh, they'll be back, she said quietly. But next time, they'll bring everything they have. She turned to face her crew. These men and women had just helped win the first battle in what would probably be a long war. They had shown the galaxy that Earth was not helpless, that humanity would not go quietly into extinction. Good work, everyone. Send a message to Earth Command. Tell them the aliens have been warned. If they choose to ignore that warning again, we'll be ready. As the human ships formed up to escort the alien survivors to the edge of the system, Sarah couldn't help but smile. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when you threatened humanity's home. The aliens thought their warning had been empty boasting. They were about to discover just how wrong they had been. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been going on for 6 hours. Counselor Prime Thisara coiled and uncoiled nervously on her throne as she listened to Admiral Vextar's report for the 3rd time. The other council members sat in stunned silence. You're telling us, she said slowly, that 12 primitive ships destroyed 47 vessels of our fleet? Admiral Vextar's image flickered in the holographic display. His scaled face showed exhaustion and something else the council had rarely seen from their military commanders. Fear. Yes, Counselor Prime. Their weapons. We've never encountered anything like them. Explain, demanded Counselor Kelthar from his position on the right side of the chamber. The insectoid being's compound eyes reflected the council chamber lights. They use kinetic projectiles accelerated to significant fractions of light speed. Our shields are designed to deflect energy weapons, not solid matter moving at 8% the speed of light. Science Counselor Morvex activated her data pad. The elderly creature's tentacles moved across the controls with practiced ease. Kinetic weapons at those velocities. The energy release would be enormous. It gets worse, Vextar continued. Their ships move like nothing we've ever seen. They pull maneuvers that should kill any biological crew. 15-20 G-forces sustained for minutes at a time. Impossible, snapped Military Counselor Drakvon. No carbon-based life form can survive those accelerations. I thought so too. But I've reviewed the battle recordings 100 times. The humans weren't using automated ships. There were biological crew aboard, somehow surviving forces that should have turned them into liquid. Thisara felt a chill run through her serpentine body. The hegemony had ruled the galaxy for 1,000 years, based on superior technology and tactics. No primitive species had ever posed a real threat. How could a civilization that had just learned to travel between stars defeat their finest fleet? We need more information, she decided. Activate all intelligence networks. I want to know everything about this human species. 3 days later, the intelligence reports began arriving. What they revealed changed everything the Council thought they knew about the galaxy. The planet they call Earth, read Intelligence Director Zixtal from her comprehensive report, has a surface gravity of 9.8 meters per second squared. This is 2.8 times the galactic average. The Council members shifted uncomfortably. High-gravity worlds usually produced primitive species that could barely reach orbit, let alone develop interstellar travel. Their atmospheric pressure is significantly higher than standard as well. Zixtal continued. The planet experiences extreme weather patterns, including massive storm systems that can level entire cities. Seismic activity is constant, with geological instability causing frequent earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. How did they ever develop civilization on such a world? Asked Counselor Kelthar. That's where it gets interesting. They didn't develop civilization despite their hostile environment. They developed it because of it. Zixtal activated a holographic display showing human history. Images of warfare, conflict, and technological development filled the chamber. For their entire recorded history, humans have been at war. Not just with their environment, but with each other. They've fought continuously for over 5,000 years. developing increasingly sophisticated methods of killing. The display showed progression from crude stone weapons to nuclear devices and beyond. Each innovation was designed for one purpose: destroying other humans more efficiently. "This is impossible," protested Counselor Morvex. "Peaceful cooperation is necessary for technological advancement. Constant warfare would prevent scientific progress. For most species, yes. But humans are different. They use warfare to drive innovation. Competition and conflict seem to accelerate their development rather than hinder it." Thaisara studied the images with growing horror. The humans had fought wars using weapons that could destroy entire cities. They had created poisons that could kill millions. They had even developed the ability to split atoms and release devastating amounts of energy. "What about their space technology?" she asked. "Primarily developed for military purposes. Their first orbital flights were weapons delivery systems. Their early space stations were designed as military platforms. Even their civilian ships carried defensive weaponry. The holographic display changed to show human space vessels. They looked crude compared to hegemony ships. But there was something about their design that made Thaisara uncomfortable. They were built like weapons, all sharp angles and efficient function. "They don't have quantum drives or energy shields," continued Zixtal, "but their kinetic weapons are far more advanced than anything in our databases. They've been perfecting the art of throwing projectiles at high speed for their entire history. From rocks to nuclear weapons to railguns," mused Counselor Morvex. "A straight evolutionary line of kinetic warfare." The most disturbing revelation came next. The intelligence director's image turned grim as she accessed the next section of her report. The ships that defeated Admiral Vextar's fleet were not military vessels. According to our analysis of human communications, they were coastal patrol ships, the human equivalent of harbor guards. Silence fell over the council chamber. If 12 patrol boats had destroyed nearly 50 warships, what could their actual military accomplish? "How many military ships do they have?" asked Military Counselor Drakfon. "Current estimates suggest over 800 vessels, with production facilities capable of building more. But that's not the most concerning discovery." Zixtal paused, her expression showing the weight of what she was about to reveal. "Our deep space sensors have detected massive construction on the dark side of their moon. The installations are enormous, easily the size of our largest orbital platforms. Power readings suggest they're weapons of some kind, though we can't determine their exact nature." "Weapons platforms," whispered Thaisara. "They're preparing for war. There's more. Analysis of human historical patterns suggests they've been monitoring galactic communications for decades. They knew about the hegemony long before we discovered them." The implications hit the council like a physical blow. The humans hadn't just achieved interstellar travel. They had been studying the galaxy's dominant power, learning about hegemony tactics and technology. The warning boys hadn't been desperate bluffs. They had been exactly what they claimed to be: warnings. "They've been preparing for this confrontation," said Counselor Kelthar, "learning about our capabilities, developing countermeasures." Admiral Vextar's voice crackled through the communication system. "Counselors, with respect, I recommend we reconsider our approach to the human situation. Their warning specifically mentioned overwhelming force. If 12 patrol ships could do this much damage, you're suggesting we negotiate?" snapped Drakfon. "The hegemony does not negotiate with primitives. I'm suggesting we consider that they might not be as primitive as we assumed." Thaisara felt the weight of command settling on her shoulders. The hegemony had faced rebellions before, defeated other military powers, absorbed countless civilizations. But they had never encountered anything like humanity, a species that treated warfare as natural selection, that thrived in conditions that would kill most galactic life. "What are your recommendations?" she asked Zixtal. "3 options, Counselor Prime. First, we could attempt diplomatic contact and try to establish peaceful relations." "Unacceptable," Drakfon interrupted. "The hegemony's reputation depends on strength. We cannot appear weak." Second option, we could quarantine their system and avoid future contact. Also unacceptable. We cannot allow a potential threat to develop unchecked. Thaisara nodded grimly. She had reached the same conclusion. And the third option? Total warfare. We assemble the largest fleet in hegemony history and destroy the human threat before it can grow stronger. The chamber fell silent as the council members considered their options. They were the most powerful civilization in the galaxy, rulers of 1,000 worlds. But for the first time in centuries, they faced an enemy that might actually be dangerous. "How large a fleet?" asked Thisura. "Every available ship from all 12 hegemony worlds. At least 2,000 vessels, including our most powerful dreadnoughts and planet killers. It would be the largest military operation in galactic history, the kind of overwhelming force that could shatter entire star systems. Surely no primitive species could stand against such power." "Do it," ordered the Counselor Prime. "Assemble the Grand Fleet. If the humans want to see overwhelming force, we'll show them what that really means." As the council session ended and the various members dispersed to begin preparations, none of them noticed the small probe drifting silently outside their chamber. It had been there for weeks, recording every word, transmitting everything back to a small blue world at the edge of space. Humanity was about to face the greatest military force in galactic history. But they would not face it unprepared. Admiral James Park stood in the observation deck of the UES Terra's Wrath, looking out at the transformed solar system. Where once there had been empty space, now massive defense platforms orbited every planet and major asteroid. The construction had taken 3 months of round-the-clock work, but humanity had prepared for this moment. "Fleet status report," he said to his aide. "Commander Lisa Rodriguez. 837 ships ready for combat, Admiral. All crews at battle stations. The lunar installations report full operational status." Park nodded, studying the tactical displays floating around him. The alien fleet would arrive soon. Intelligence reports suggested they were bringing everything they had. Over 2,000 ships from across their entire empire. On paper, it was still overwhelming odds. But humans had learned long ago that wars weren't won on paper. "Any word from Earth Command? President Martinez sends her regards and reminds you that the whole planet is watching." Park smiled grimly. No pressure at all. The entire human species depending on his fleet to protect their homeworld from the largest invasion force in galactic history. "Sir," called Lieutenant Hayes from the sensor station. Multiple hyperspace signatures detected at the edge of the system. "It's them." The main display shifted to show the approaching enemy. Park had expected a large fleet, but the reality was still impressive. Thousands of ships emerging from hyperspace in perfect formation, their crystalline hulls catching starlight like a field of deadly jewels. "My God," whispered Commander Rodriguez. "Look at the size of those things." The largest alien vessels were easily 10 times the mass of Terra's Wrath. They bristled with weapons that could probably vaporize a human ship with a single shot. Behind them came hundreds of smaller craft, still massive by human standards. "Remember," Park announced to his bridge crew, "we're not trying to match them ship for ship. We're fighting smart, not hard." The alien fleet began its approach, moving in the same intimidation formation they had used against every other species. It had worked for 1,000 years. A display of overwhelming power that broke enemy morale before the first shot was fired. But humans had grown up on a world where being intimidated meant being eaten. "Incoming transmission," reported the communications officer. "Put it through." The face that appeared on the main screen was the same Admiral Vextar, who had led the first attack. But he looked different now, older, more careful. The easy arrogance was gone, replaced by the wariness of someone who had learned to respect his enemy. "Admiral Park," Vextar said, his translated voice carrying formal courtesy. "I am Admiral Vextar of the Hegemony Grand Fleet. You are vastly outnumbered. Surrender now and your deaths will be quick." Park stepped forward, his hands clasped behind his back. "Admiral Vextar, I am Admiral James Park of the United Earth Defense Force. You were warned what would happen if you returned with hostile intent. This is your final chance to withdraw peacefully. Admiral Park, I command 2,000 of the most advanced warships in the galaxy. You have fewer than 900 primitive vessels. Mathematics alone demands your surrender." "Admiral," Park said calmly, "your people seem to have trouble understanding human warnings. Let me be very clear. You are about to attack the homeworld of a species that evolved by fighting everything that moved for 4 billion years. We didn't conquer our planet. We survived it. There's a difference." For a moment, something that might have been doubt flickered across the alien's scaled features. Then his military training reasserted itself. "Your bravery is noted, Admiral Park, but courage cannot overcome impossible odds." "We'll see about that." Park cut the transmission and turned to his tactical officer. "Execute Battle Plan Omega. All ships weapons free. Show them what Earth's children can do. The human fleet exploded into motion. Where the alien ships moved in stately formation, the human vessels scattered like startled fish, each one accelerating on a different vector. To outside observers, it looked like panic. The aliens began pursuing individual ships, confident that their superior numbers would quickly overwhelm the smaller human force. They had no idea what they were walking into. Lunar. Command reports ready, announced Lieutenant Hayes. Park watched the tactical display as alien ships spread throughout the inner system, chasing human vessels that seemed to be fleeing in disorder. When the enemy fleet was properly dispersed, he gave the order he had been waiting months to give. Fire. The dark side of the moon lit up like a new star. Massive railguns, each one the size of a city block, began launching projectiles at 15% of light speed. The tungsten slugs were invisible until they hit their targets, and by then it was too late to dodge. The first alien dreadnought simply disintegrated. One moment it was there, the next it was an expanding cloud of debris and energy. Then another vanished and another. Jesus, breathed Commander Rodriguez. Those things are monsters. The lunar weapons platforms were humanity's greatest achievement, built in secret over 50 years. Powered by fusion reactors that could energize a small moon, they could accelerate projectiles to speeds that turned simple metal into weapons of mass destruction. But the moon wasn't the only surprise waiting for the alien fleet. Throughout the asteroid belt, what had looked like mining stations suddenly revealed their true nature. Defense platforms disguised as industrial facilities opened up with their own kinetic weapons. The aliens found themselves caught in a crossfire that spanned the entire inner system. "Sir, enemy fleet is attempting to regroup," reported the tactical officer. "Let them try. Begin Phase 2. The scattered human ships suddenly reversed course, accelerating toward their pursuers with inhuman speed. What had looked like a panicked retreat revealed itself as a carefully planned ambush. The aliens had spread their fleet across millions of kilometers of space. Now they faced concentrated human attacks from multiple directions. Captain Sarah Chen, now commanding a full battle group aboard the UES Vengeance, led her ships in a devastating attack on an alien cruiser formation. Her vessels moved in perfect coordination, their enhanced crews pulling maneuvers that would have killed unmodified humans. "Target their command ship," she ordered. "Full spread all weapons." 20 railguns fired simultaneously. The alien flagship's shields flared and held for almost 3 seconds before failing catastrophically. The ship broke apart under the kinetic assault, taking its escort vessels with it. Throughout the system, similar scenes played out as human tactics proved superior to alien technology. The hegemony ships were individually more powerful, but they had been designed to fight the wars of the past. Massive vessels trading shots at long range, victory going to whoever had the biggest guns. Humans fought like the predators they were. Fast, coordinated, striking at weak points in vital systems. They used the solar system itself as a weapon, using planetary gravity wells to slingshot their ships to impossible speeds. "Admiral," called the communications officer, "we're receiving scattered surrender signals from enemy vessels." Park studied the tactical display. The alien fleet was in complete disarray. Hundreds of ships destroyed, others fleeing toward the edge of the system. The carefully planned invasion had become a rout. "Accept all surrenders, but keep firing on any ship that maintains hostile posture." Admiral Vextar's voice crackled through the communication system, his earlier composure completely gone. "Admiral Park, we request terms." "This was not, we did not expect—" "Admiral," Park interrupted, "you brought 2,000 ships to destroy my home world. Did you really think we would just roll over and die? Your tactics, your weapons. This is not how civilized beings wage war." Park felt his temper flare. "Civilized? You came here to commit genocide, Admiral. You've spent 1,000 years conquering peaceful species. You call that civilized?" On the tactical display, the lunar weapons platforms continued their deadly work. Each shot erased another alien vessel from existence. The survivors were fleeing now, racing for the edge of the system and the safety of hyperspace. "The hegemony will remember this," Vextar said, his voice carrying equal parts rage and fear. "Good," Park replied, "because we're not done with you yet." As the remains of the alien fleet limped away from Earth, Admiral Park began planning the next phase of the war. The hegemony had brought their best ships, their finest crews, their most advanced weapons to destroy humanity. They had been crushed so completely that it would take them years to recover. But humans didn't fight defensive wars. They had learned everything they needed to know about their enemies. Now it was time to take the fight to them. The warning boys had promised overwhelming force for those who threatened. Earth, the galaxy, was about to learn that humanity always kept its promises. In the most devastating defeat in galactic history, the hegemony lost over 1,800 ships in a battle that lasted less than 6 hours. The survivors would carry news of humanity's power to every corner of the galaxy. Earth's children were no longer hiding at the edge of space. They were coming. Admiral Vextar sat in the detention cell aboard the human ship, staring at his scaled hands. 6 months ago, he had commanded the largest fleet in galactic history. Now he was a prisoner of war, waiting to face trial for crimes against sentient species. The cell was clean and comfortable, better than what most hegemony prisoners could expect. The humans had been surprisingly civilized in their treatment of captured aliens. They provided medical care, adequate food, even entertainment systems. It was not what he had expected from a species of violent primitives. The door chimed softly and a human guard entered. Sergeant Martinez was a small woman by human standards, but Vextar had learned not to underestimate them based on size. She wore the blue uniform of Earth Defense Forces, with ribbons marking her service in what the humans called the Solar War. "Time for your daily walk, Admiral," she said in accented but clear Zephyrian. Vextar stood slowly, his joints aching from months of confinement. The gravity aboard human ships was crushing by galactic standards, part of their natural advantage in space combat. He followed Martinez through the corridors of the ship, noting how the crew members moved with casual efficiency under conditions that would cripple most species. They passed through an observation deck where Vextar could see out into space. What he saw there still shocked him, even after months of captivity. Human ships moved in formation around them, hundreds of vessels that had once been hidden throughout their solar system. But these weren't the crude patrol boats that had first defeated his forces. These were the real Earth Defense Fleet, sleek, deadly ships built specifically for interstellar warfare. In the months since the Battle of Sol, humanity had revealed the true extent of their military preparation. They had been building this fleet in secret for 50 years, waiting for the day when the galaxy would finally notice them. "Where are we going today?" Vextar asked as they walked. "Memorial Deck," Martinez replied. "Same as every day for the past week." The memorial was a strange place by alien standards. The humans had dedicated an entire section of their flagship to honoring the victims of hegemony expansion. Holographic displays showed the faces and names of beings from hundreds of conquered worlds. Some were species Vextar had helped destroy personally. They stopped in front of a display showing the Kethval system, one of his earlier conquests. 3 billion peaceful farmers wiped out because their world contained useful minerals. At the time, it had seemed like a routine operation. "Why do you bring me here?" he asked. Martinez studied the memorial, her expression thoughtful. "Because I want you to understand something. When we destroyed your fleet, we weren't fighting for conquest or glory. We were fighting for them." She gestured at the faces on the display. "Every species you people wiped out. Every civilization you absorbed. Every world you stripped bare. We knew about all of it." Vextar felt a chill run through his scaled hide. "You were monitoring us for that long?" 50 years, Admiral. We listened to your communications, studied your tactics, learned about your conquests, and we prepared." The scale of human planning suddenly became clear to him. They hadn't just developed space technology. They had specifically prepared for war against the hegemony, studying their enemy for half a century before making contact. "But why?" he asked. "You could have remained hidden. We might never have found you." Martinez turned to face him, and he saw something in her human eyes that made him step back. It was the look of a predator that had finally cornered its prey. "Because somebody had to stop you." They continued walking through the memorial in silence. Vextar read the names and numbers, the staggering scale of hegemony expansion over the centuries. 847 civilizations, trillions of sentient beings, all destroyed or enslaved by the empire he had served faithfully for decades. "Your species," he said finally. "You fight differently than anyone else in the galaxy." "We fight to win," Martinez replied simply. "Most galactic species seem to fight for honor or glory or to prove a point. Humans fight because something needs to be dead, and we're the ones who have to kill it. They stopped at another display, this one showing recent events, the aftermath of the Solar War, as human historians were already calling it. The complete destruction of hegemony military power, followed by surgical strikes against every remaining military installation in their space. But what impressed Vextar most was what the humans hadn't done. They could have wiped out every hegemony world, turned their entire civilization into radioactive ash. Instead, they had targeted only military assets, leaving civilian populations untouched. "Why didn't you destroy us completely?" he asked. Martinez was quiet for a long moment. "Because we're not you," she said finally. "We don't make war on civilians. Your military chose this fight. Your civilians didn't." On the display, Vextar could see images of hegemony worlds under human occupation, but it wasn't the brutal suppression he had expected. Human administrators worked alongside local governments to establish new systems of rule. Former slave species were being freed and offered protection under human authority. "The galaxy is changing," Martinez continued. "Your people ruled through fear and superior technology. That's over now. There's a new power in charge and we do things differently." They reached the end of the memorial, where a large display showed the current state of galactic affairs. The 12 worlds of the hegemony had formally surrendered 6 months ago. Their remaining military forces had been disbanded, their weapons destroyed. Reparations were being paid to surviving victims of their expansion, but the humans weren't content to simply replace one empire with another. They were establishing something new, a galactic federation where species governed themselves under human protection. Former hegemony subjects were being given independence for the first time in centuries. "Your species is remarkable," Vextar admitted. "You could rule the galaxy with absolute power. Instead, you choose to liberate it." "Power corrupts," Martinez said. "We've seen what happens when one species decides it's superior to all others. We won't make that mistake." As they walked back toward Vexitar's cell, he thought about the staggering reversal of fortune. In less than a year, humanity had gone from unknown primitives to the dominant power in the galaxy. They had destroyed the hegemony's military, liberated hundreds of worlds, and established a new order based on cooperation rather than conquest. "What will happen to me?" he asked as they reached his quarters. "That depends on the tribunal," Martinez replied. "You're being charged with genocide and crimes against sentient species. The evidence is overwhelming." Vextar nodded slowly. He had known this moment would come eventually. In his long career, he had overseen the destruction of entire civilizations. Justice had finally caught up with him. "For what it's worth," he said, "I'm glad you people exist. The galaxy needed someone to stop us." Martinez paused at the door. "Admiral, do you remember the warning your people received?" "The one about entering Earth's territory?" "Of course. Any hostile action will be met with immediate and overwhelming force. Do you understand now why we put those boys there?" Vextar thought about the question. The warnings hadn't been threats or bluffs. They had been exactly what they claimed to be. Advance notice of what would happen to anyone who attacked humanity's home. "You were trying to save lives," he realized. "Even our lives." "We gave you every chance to turn back," Martinez confirmed. "The warning wasn't meant to intimidate you. It was meant to protect you from us." As the door closed behind her, Vextar sat on his bunk and considered the irony. Humanity, the species the hegemony had dismissed as primitive savages, had tried to warn them away from a fight they couldn't win. They had shown more mercy to their enemies than the hegemony had ever shown to theirs. Outside his small window, he could see human ships patrolling the space around former hegemony worlds. They moved with the same deadly efficiency he had witnessed in the Solar War, but now they were protectors rather than conquerors. The galaxy had new guardians now, and for the first time in 1,000 years, the innocent had nothing to fear from the strong. In the end, the hegemony's greatest mistake hadn't been underestimating human technology or tactics. It had been ignoring a simple warning from a species that always meant exactly what it said. The humans had promised overwhelming force for those who threatened their home. They had delivered on that promise completely. Now the galaxy lived under new rules, enforced by beings who understood the difference between strength and cruelty. The age of galactic empire was over. The age of human protection had begun, and somewhere in space, new warning buoys broadcast their message to any species that might consider repeating the hegemony's mistakes. This space, protected by Earth Defense Forces. Peaceful travelers welcome. Aggressors will be destroyed. The galaxy had learned to take human warnings very seriously indeed.